Why you can't sleep. 7 Japanese night habits that calm the brain. It's almost midnight. You're exhausted. You've been thinking about your bed for hours, but the moment you finally lie down, something strange happens. Your body stops, your brain starts. Suddenly, you remember the email you forgot to send. The conversation from this afternoon starts replaying. Tomorrow's problems arrive early. You check your phone for what feels like 2 minutes, and somehow 20 minutes disappear. Then you put it down, close your eyes again, and wonder, why am I still awake when I'm this tired? Maybe the problem isn't that you don't know how to sleep. Maybe your brain simply hasn't received enough evidence that the day is over. And that changes the question completely. Instead of asking, how do I force myself to fall asleep? A better question might be, how do I make the final hours of my day feel unmistakably different from the rest of it? That is where several Japanese-inspired evening habits become interesting. Not because every Japanese person follows the same routine, and not because Japan has discovered some secret cure for insomnia. The useful lesson is simpler than that. A calm night is often built through transitions. One small signal tells the body that work is finished. Another lowers stimulation. Another quiets the environment. Another gives the mind somewhere gentle to land. Individually, these habits look almost insignificant. Together, they create something powerful, a runway into sleep. And once you understand that idea, you may realize that your bedtime problem actually begins several hours before you get into bed. Think about a normal modern evening. You finish work, but you keep answering messages. You eat dinner while watching something. You clean up while checking notifications. You move from a laptop to a television to a phone. At 10 o'clock, the lights are still bright. At 10:30, you're reading news, watching videos, solving problems, comparing products, checking tomorrow's weather, or accidentally discovering something you suddenly feel you need to know. Then at 11, you put the phone down, switch off the light, and expect your brain to instantly understand. Now we sleep. But from your brain's point of view, very little has changed. The information was still arriving. The decisions were still happening. The lights were still bright. Your attention was still being pulled in different directions. Emotionally and mentally, the day was still open. And this is an important distinction. Being tired is not always the same as being ready for sleep. You can be physically exhausted while your mind is still in daytime mode. That is why the first habit begins long before your head reaches the pillow. Finish dinner a little earlier when your schedule allows it. This sounds almost too ordinary to matter, but think about what a late, heavy meal asks your body to do. You may be trying to become quiet while your digestive system has just been given another major job. And late-night eating often comes with other stimulation. More lights, more television, more conversation, more cleaning, more movement, sometimes another coffee, sometimes dessert, sometimes scrolling while sitting at the table long after you were actually hungry. So instead of treating dinner as something that happens somewhere inside the evening, try treating it as the first closing ceremony of the day. Dinner ends, the kitchen is reset, the eating stops, and another phase begins. You don't need a perfect schedule. You don't need to suddenly start eating dinner at 5 in the afternoon. Just experiment. If you normally eat very close to bedtime, try moving dinner 30 minutes earlier for a week. Then notice how the rest of the evening changes. That small shift matters because a good night routine doesn't begin by adding more things. It begins by gradually removing things the body still has to process. Then comes one of the most recognizable Japanese evening rituals, the bath. In Japan, bathing is often more than quickly getting clean. There is an important distinction between washing the body and soaking. You clean yourself first. Then you enter the warm bath. That changes the experience completely. The bath is no longer just hygiene, it becomes a boundary. There is the day before the bath, and there is the evening after it. Imagine coming home after a difficult day. There are still dishes in the kitchen, messages you haven't answered, work you could continue, things you could organize, problems you could solve. Then you take a warm bath. For 10 or 15 minutes, nothing is required of you. You are not producing. You are not optimizing. You are not catching up. You are simply warm, still, and temporarily unavailable to the demands of the day. That psychological boundary may be just as valuable as the physical comfort, and you don't need a Japanese-style bathroom or a deep ofuro to use the idea. A warm shower can become the same kind of signal. The important part is what the ritual means. When the water begins, work ends. After the bath or shower, avoid immediately reopening the entire day. Don't get out, put on comfortable clothes, and then return to your laptop for another hour. Protect the transition you just created. Think of it as crossing a bridge. Once you cross into the quieter part of the evening, try not to keep running back to the other side. Now look at the room around you. Because your environment is talking to your brain all evening, even when you aren't consciously listening, many homes are almost as bright at 10 at night as they are at 7 in the morning. Ceiling lights, kitchen lights, television screens, laptop screens, phone screens inches from the face. There is no visual sunset. The clock says night. The room says, we are still open for business. So the third habit is extremely simple. Let the house become darker before you expect your mind to become quieter. You don't need to sit in darkness. Just reduce unnecessary brightness. Turn off the harsh overhead light. Use a smaller lamp. Choose warmer, softer lighting where possible. Allow unused rooms to become dark. Suddenly, the evening starts looking like an evening. This is something traditional Japanese interiors can teach beautifully. A room does not always need to be flooded with light to feel comfortable. Shadows are not necessarily something to eliminate. Softness has a purpose, and this creates an important principle. Your environment should begin behaving the way you want your body to behave. If you want your mind to slow down, make the room look slower. If you want fewer demands, remove visual demands. If you want the day to feel finished, stop making your home look like an office that never closes. But light is only half of the problem. The object in your hand may be keeping the entire day alive. Your phone, this is where many night routines collapse, because the phone no longer feels like one activity. It contains all activities: work, entertainment, news, friends, shopping, arguments, weather, banking, email, music, videos, tomorrow, yesterday, and the opinions of several million strangers you probably should have ignored until morning. So, even if you are physically sitting in a quiet bedroom, mentally you may still be everywhere. That is why the fourth habit is a digital sunset. Not necessarily a dramatic rule where every screen disappears at exactly 8 o'clock. Make it realistic. A useful approach is what I call the 60-30-10 rule. About 60 minutes before bed, stop doing things that make your brain feel as if the working day is continuing. If a problem can wait until tomorrow, let tomorrow have it. About 30 minutes before bed, put the phone away if you can. Charge it somewhere you cannot reach automatically. Not because the phone is evil, but because when it is 20 centimeters from your hand, resisting it becomes another task. And the whole point of this routine is to ask less from yourself. Then, in the final 10 minutes, make the environment almost boring. No news, no work, no argument, no frantic preparation for tomorrow, just a few predictable signals that tell your brain, Nothing important is going to happen here anymore. That sentence may sound unexciting. At night, unexciting is a feature, and there is another Japanese-inspired habit that can help separate the emotional residue of the day from the quiet of the evening: a gentle walk. You could think of it simply as a yoru no sanpo, an evening walk, but there is one rule. Do not turn it into another productivity project. This is not your 10,000-step challenge. It is not cardio. You are not trying to beat yesterday's pace. You don't need a podcast teaching you 12 new things. You don't need to make phone calls while walking. Just walk. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, around the block, down a quiet street, through the garden, anywhere safe and comfortable. Let your eyes look farther away than a screen. Notice the temperature, the sound of your footsteps, a window with warm light, a tree moving in the wind, the neighborhood becoming quieter. There is something valuable about walking without trying to arrive anywhere important. During the day, almost every movement has a destination. At night, walking can simply become decompression. And if going outside is not practical, you can create the same transition indoors. Slowly tidy the kitchen, water a plant, fold a few clothes, open a window for a moment. Do something physical, repetitive, and undemanding. The goal is not to complete more tasks. The goal is to let the intensity of the day drain away. Then, when you return, resist the temptation to immediately fill the silence again. This is where the sixth habit becomes useful. Read something calm. A physical book is ideal if you enjoy one, not because reading is automatically superior to every digital activity, but because a book has boundaries. One page is one page. It does not vibrate. It does not suddenly show you breaking news. It does not recommend an angry stranger. It does not notice that your attention is weakening and instantly serve you something more stimulating. A book stays where you left it. That makes reading useful for a brain that has spent the entire day being pulled outward. Choose the material carefully. Bedtime is probably not the best moment for something that makes you desperate to know what happens next. You don't need the most exciting thriller ever written. You also don't need to turn bedtime reading into self-improvement. This is not the moment to highlight 40 pages about becoming more efficient. Try essays, gentle fiction, nature writing, poetry, travel writing, something familiar, something that narrows your attention rather than exploding it in 10 directions. Even 5 pages can be enough. The goal is not to finish the book. The goal is to give your mind one quiet place to rest. And then we reach the habit that may be the least visible, but perhaps the most important. Because you can quiet the room, you can put away the phone, you can take a warm bath, you can read. And still, the moment everything becomes silent, your mind may return to the emotional weight of the day, the thing you didn't finish, the mistake you made, the awkward conversation, the person who disappointed you, the thing you wish you had said, the decision you still haven't made. And then tomorrow enters the room too. What if this happens? What if I forget that? What if I'm not ready? This is where the Japanese idea of kansha can be useful. Kansha means appreciation or gratitude, but I don't want to reduce it to a cheerful instruction to think positive. Some days are difficult. Some days are disappointing. Some days genuinely hurt. You do not need to pretend otherwise. The purpose is not to erase what went wrong. It is to prevent what went wrong from becoming the only story your mind carries into sleep. Try one small question before bed. Not, what did I achieve today? Not, was I productive enough? Ask, what was enough today? Maybe dinner was enough. Maybe you finished one thing you had been avoiding. Maybe someone sent you a kind message. Maybe you laughed once. Maybe your body carried you through a difficult day. Maybe the weather was beautiful for 5 minutes. Maybe nothing spectacular happened, and you still made it home. You can write down 3 things, or simply think of them. Then tell yourself, today does not need anything else from me. That sentence creates something many people never give themselves: emotional closure. Because sometimes the brain keeps working at night not because there is an urgent problem, but because we never gave the day an ending. We simply carried it into bed unfinished. And now, when you step back and look at all 7 habits, something interesting becomes clear. None of them is dramatic. Finish dinner a little earlier, take a warm bath or shower, dim the lights, put the phone away, walk for a few minutes, read a few pages, remember what was enough today. None of these things is a magic sleep cure, and that may be exactly why they work so well together as a routine. Because the real secret is not one powerful habit. It is the gradual removal of noise. Think of a difficult evening as containing 4 kinds of noise: physical noise, a heavy meal, tension, too much activity, a body that has not yet slowed down. Visual noise, bright lights, screens, constant movement, an environment that still looks like daytime. Mental noise, work, messages, scrolling, unfinished tasks, endless information. And emotional noise, worry, regret, frustration, anticipation, the quiet fear that today wasn't enough, or that tomorrow will ask more from you than you can give. Now look at the routine again. An earlier dinner reduces 1 layer of physical noise. The bath creates a boundary between activity and rest. Dim lighting changes the visual atmosphere. The digital sunset closes the information stream. The evening walk helps the day decompress. Reading gives scattered attention one quiet destination. Kansha gives the day emotional closure. Layer by layer, the evening asks less from you, and perhaps that is the deeper lesson. A good nighttime routine is not really about adding 7 new responsibilities to your life. It is the opposite. As the night gets deeper, you remove 1 light, 1 screen, 1 decision, 1 task, 1 source of stimulation, 1 unfinished emotional loop, until eventually, there is nothing left that urgently needs your attention. You do not force sleep. You remove what keeps asking you to stay awake. So tonight, don't try to completely redesign your evening. Choose 1 signal. Finish dinner a little earlier. Take a warm shower and treat it as the official end of work. Dim the room. Leave your phone outside arm's reach. Walk for 10 quiet minutes. Read 5 pages. Or, before closing your eyes, ask yourself, what was enough today? Do that 1 thing consistently. Then add another when it begins to feel natural. Because the goal is not to build the perfect Japanese night routine. The goal is to create an evening your nervous system can recognize. An evening that slowly says, the work is done. The information can wait. Tomorrow has not started yet. You have nothing left to prove tonight. The day is finished. And maybe that is what many of us have been missing. Sleep is not a reward you receive once you have exhausted yourself enough. It is what becomes possible when your body, your room, and your mind finally agree on the same thing. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to solve. And for today, you have done enough. Which part of your evening keeps your mind awake the longest? Your phone, work, food, or your own thoughts? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more practical lessons from Japanese living that can make everyday life calmer, simpler, and more intentional, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video, but for tonight, let the day end.